And so finally, I will show you this variety. But these particular flowers, they seem to love the sandy environment. And so, if I show you around on this beautiful, fine day, with this amazing coastline and beach which is second to none, you can see over there, we've got all these flowers growing. And I will just show you the quality of the sand here. Look how beautiful and fine and pure it is. And if we look around, we won't find a cigarette butt. We won't find a lollipop stick. Invariably, you'll find nothing. And if you look upon it, it's almost like snow. It's got a certain purity to it, which this whole coastline has. It has a purity to it. The fresh, beautiful sea air. Invariably, the wind is coming from the ocean, and there's thousands of miles of ocean out there, and so it's bringing the purest of air with it. So therefore then, can you imagine the difference from living here to living in a busy city whereby it's full of carbon monoxide and of course Wi-Fi and all that shit? Here the sun is beaming down every day, so we are being radiated with vitamin D and that life-giving energy and vitality and beauty. And then when you look at the natural world, these cliffs are renowned for having energy because many of the cliffs around here, they are a red oxidized variety of sandstone which is supposed to pertain and embody a very high frequency of energy. And this area apparently is supposed to be where the old Lumeria was, you know, in the old times, in mythology and in history indeed. I mean, even Plato wrote about the legitimacy of Atlantis. And so there was Atlantis and then there was Lumeria. And apparently these two continents had a war with one another and nuked each other, and then the continent sank. Whatever happened, but it seems that this mythology relating to Atlantis, there's something there, you know, from bygone times. And so I don't dismiss any of this mythology, because where there's smoke there's fire, people. Now then, there's the big black one, and that's really interesting, and I want to step over here gently. Come on, bee, did I scare you away? Come back. Hopefully he's going to stay busy in there. I just find it really interesting seeing them bury themselves within these pollen distributors, foraging down. You can see their little arms going, you can see their little pincers going as they collect the nectar, and also you can see the particles of pollen getting attached to the hairs on the back. But also when you watch bees, you can see them, they're gathering with the back legs the pollen, and they're sticking it to the back legs. So they're gathering it with the front legs and sticking it on the back legs, and then when you look at them very close, you can see that they've got these like bags. It's just it's like a resin that you know, is yellow. It's the pollen which is all sticking to the back legs, and then when they fly off, they've got these two big you know, bags of pollen on the back legs, and then they go back to the nest. They put it in the hive, and you know, they'll make the honey and the wax out of it. Somehow they'll extract the honey and the wax and put it into different compartments. How do they do that? Anyway, hope you've enjoyed this little series on nature loving. I love nature, and I'm not hypocritical when I say I love nature. What is it that I'm loving? I'm loving the feeling that I get from these flowers. I'm loving the connection which looking at things like that give me. So therefore, what it tells me is that within me there is potential for appreciation, and this appreciation grows the more involvement and the closer you look to it, and the more your senses are filled with the smell and the touch, and whatever aura that they're giving off, what feeling the colour gives you. Various colours, that they change our emotional state. And so when you get involved with that, then you're getting involved with yourself. This is the whole paradoxical thing about it. When we look at the abstract world, what we think is an abstract world, there isn't really an abstract world, because it's all going on inside here, and it's the perception that we've got. People will walk by these flowers every single day of their lives, and the chances are very, very few of them have ever got down and looked at the flower and pondered anything and seen what they taste like and see what they feel like, and just feel what the petals are like on the skin, and just to feel the connection from the heart or whatever it is that creates pleasure and satisfaction. They satisfy me. But I'm not in a hypocritical stance in relation to this, because I don't damage flowers in any shape or form. And I don't damage any of the natural world in any shape or form, other than where it's absolutely unavoidable. When you're walking through a meadow, and I don't even like to walk through the meadow when they've got beautiful flowers and poppies and all the creatures, because I'm conscious of this. But if you want to get involved in it, then it's a necessary requirement, isn't it? But due to the hardy nature of plants, then you can tread on them and you'll fold them down, but you won't kill them. And most of the creatures, if you're treading on them when they're amongst grass, then you won't compromise them, because there's always some space between it. So the chances are that you're not really doing any damage at all. And so this is the difference, you see, between saying that you are a nature lover. I mean, nature, it encompasses everything, doesn't it? It even encompasses the human being. So if I say I love the natural world, then even the human being comes into that. But I can't really say generally I love the human being. I've got so many reservations about the human being. There's so many things about the human being that prevent me from having that connection with them, because they do so many atrocious things. Willingly or in their ignorance, they do so many atrocious things, and I can't say I love them, but one day maybe I will come to have a certain compassion for their ignorance and for their outright ambivalence to whether they do damage or not. Completely ambivalent whether they create destruction. And, you know, I guess ultimately, when I finally become enlightened as much as one can be, then I will look at all human beings, I guess, with a certain ambivalence. Whether they exhibit beauty and all the positive aspects of what it is to be a human being, or whether they exhibit all the negative aspects. Because at the end of the day, we're not really responsible for our actions. Even though we're supposed to learn how to be responsible, and we can learn to a degree how to be more responsible, but if we haven't had the right tuition as youngsters, and if nobody has really pointed out to us the beauty and the value of the natural world and the human being and the life and everything, if nobody has pointed it out to them, then the vast majority of people can't see it, because their minds have been stolen by people who have pointed out the value in the matrix, and therefore their attention is directed to whatever's in the matrix, and they don't think there's any value in the natural world, you see, because they haven't been taught that. They haven't been told that there's any value there. And so therefore then, when people commit any variety of atrocity towards the planet and the human being, it's simply because they've been programmed in a different way. And so that's where compassion comes into it, isn't it? We have to have a level of acceptance. And then where does the acceptance end? Does it encompass, like, serial killers? Does it encompass people that, you know, kill children? Does it encompass paedophiles? Does it encompass these hierarchies which do their ceremonies and sacrifice babies and drink their blood? Would our compassion be expected to encompass all of that? That's the question, you see. And I don't know whether that's possible. And if it is possible, then we have to ask ourselves, then, what is the point in having values? Values are supposed to give rise to being a beautiful human being. We value life, and so therefore we don't commit these atrocities, and we do the right thing, and we will help people in every conceivable area. They're valuable human attributes, aren't they? But if ultimately, for us to be enlightened, we have to overlook the positivity of the human values, of acquiring human values, if ultimately to be enlightened is that we accept absolutely everything for the way it is, then what is the point in gathering virtue and values upon our journey? You see, it gives rise to a complacency, and we may be forgiven to thinking, well, if this thing ultimately is about compassion, then I will be received by the universe, by the universal compassion, regardless of what I do in this dimension, because I'm not really responsible for my actions. Like I say, due to all of the energies which have took precedent over my mind when I was young. And so we find ourselves then back in the paradox, don't we, people? Every single perceivable place you look for truth, you cannot find it, because there's always a paradoxical opposite, which tells you that no one concept or feeling or assessment that you have over and above anything else has value over and above everything else. So I realise that my discourses are difficult to receive by most, and so I'll just run over the conclusion of this again. If in this life we are supposed to be seeking to be the best possible version of a human being that we possibly can, that entails any number of sacrifice and any number of labour and attempt to create something of value, to mould this thing, to eradicate all of the negative aspects of what we are as a human being in relation to being selfish. We shouldn't be selfish at all, apparently, but the whole thing is how can we not be selfish when we are a self? Just by being a self, that then we can't form any of the conclusion that we are selfish by nature because of our self. If we don't have a self, then we wouldn't be selfish. We'd be a collection, wouldn't we? You see, but this is it. Because we consider somehow that we are a self and we do have separate consciousness, then we cannot avoid being selfish. It's the tools that we've been given with to operate in this thing. So what Buddhists tell us and super gurus tell us, that we have to lose our selfishness and we have to become as if one. How can we do this when our brains and our spirit tell us that we're separate? And so if you look at all the negative energies and all the things that they do, all of the Pol Pots, all of the Stalins and all of the Genghis Khans and all of those variety of people which never paid any regard for human life whatsoever. Ultimately, if we're all one and it's a compassionate universe, then what they did as individuals doesn't really matter. It doesn't change the fact that the universe fundamentally is compassionate, and whatever we do will be forgiven because we are little more than children. We think we're the most intelligent thing in the universe, and yet we're little more than children. And so I guess it's a bit like if you have a child 2-3 years old and the child's got problems and it's aggressive and it's selfish and violence and all these sort of things, then we as adults, as sentient, intelligent creatures, we should be looking at those children and going, it isn't their fault. How can it be their fault when they're only 2 years old? They haven't had the time to learn. They haven't had time to experience, to make choices as to how they want to act. They're just acting in a certain way beyond their control. But the only thing the human being can do is chastise those children and bring them into line, bring them into the arena of social norms and tell them that that level of action isn't acceptable as far as the masses are concerned, because it's antisocial, it's anti the whole. And so we're told to be anti the whole in many instances, but then we're also encouraged to be anti-collectivization, that we should go out there and make of this world what we can and grab the world by its balls and become this and become that. And that's all selfish, isn't it? So everywhere you look, people, you can't find no right outside of it being also wrong. And it's a bit like if you got a circle of righteousness, then this circle will always be overlapping another circle of wrongness. Like the yin and the yang thing. A little bit of white in the side of the black, a little bit of black in the side of the white. It's unavoidable to have something which is ultimately fundamental truth, because there is always an opposite which comes into play. And so, like the what's it called, the Veticus Piscis, I've forgotten what that term is now, but it's the circle and the circle overlapping like an eye, and this creates the whole. In between you've got a part of the both, and that is where reality lies. The is and the isn't, the everything that there is, because it's a conglomerate, you see. Vetica Piscis, is that it? Anyway. It's time for meditation. I'm going to find a spot over close to the water's edge, leaning up against a cliff, with the sun beaming down on me, and I will drift away into the nothingness, whereby I'm no longer a human being, I'm no longer having a human experience, I'm no longer Aaron sitting on the beach. There is no beach, there is no ocean, there's nothing. And this again is a difficult concept for those of you to embrace unless you've experienced a completely empty mind, whereby there is nothing except isness. And that's a very, very refreshing and revitalizing and energizing thing to experience. And it's where your mind is so open to receiving the wisdom of the universe.